We have been continuing to endeavor to understand the nature of emptiness, and the stories that have been told over these last weeks have contained a lot of demons and devils and ghouls and so forth. But just to make a still moment today, and to coin a phrase that you'll no doubt understand later on, let's do a reality check. Now, there's a very old story, just to start us off, and it's the story of a very, very pious man who every day prayed to the Lord, and he did the rituals assiduously and gave his offerings and so forth. And he would often beseech God, please, please come, I'll set out a feast for you, I'll make it the best feast that you have ever seen, please come to my feast. And so he designated a time. He said, God, next Saturday at 7 o'clock I'm going to make the biggest feast that you ever did see for you, please, please come. So he prepared a great repast and laid it out and waited and waited. And at 7 o'clock, right on the dot, a big black dog came bounding down the road, jumped on the table and was eating the feast. Well, the man got a stick and he beat the dog. This is God's feast. Get out, 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 out. But God didn't come. So the man wailed, oh God, I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not good, I'm so sorry, God, I'm so sorry. And after a few days of this weeping and wailing, there was a great thunder in the sky, and the clouds parted, and there was God, had a plaster on his leg, had his head bandaged, his elbow tied up, and said, God, what happened to you? And God said, well, you invited me to a feast and I wanted to enjoy it. So I came as a big black dog, but you beat me and sent me away. You no doubt remember those little Zen anecdotes, and there's that one about Li Tzu when he woke up one day and he said to his followers, last night I dreamt that I was a butterfly, going from flower to flower, drinking the nectar. And now I'm awake. I'm a man, and I'm confused. Am I a man dreaming of being a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming of being a man? And then there was the man whose only son died, and while they were burning the body on the bier, he was standing there without a tear in his eye, and his wife berated him, look at you, how can you be so hard, not shedding a tear when our only son has died? And the man said, for many nights I have been dreaming that I had 5 sons, and each one of them was taken to war and was killed. For whom should I weep? The sons of my dream, or the son of my seeming waking? And finally, there's a little anecdote about King Tanaka. He was said to be somewhat of an enlightened king. But one day he was out in his garden, lying on a bed of rose petals, being fanned by his servants, when he fell into a deep sleep. And in that sleep he dreamt that he was invaded by his neighbor's monarch, who carried him away in chains and tortured him. And in the middle of the torture, he woke up sweating to find himself on his bed of rose petals being fanned by his servants. And a few days later, in the same situation, exactly the same thing happened. So he was very perplexed. What is real? So he called his sages and his great pundits to him to ask them to solve this problem. But none of them could give him an answer, until some years later, a very misshapen sage came to the palace and said to the king, "I have the answer for you." And the King Tanaka looked at him and said, "But look at you. How can you, such a misshapen creature, have wisdom?" And the misshapen man said, "Because from the earliest age I could do nothing else. I studied well. Tell me, sire, in your dream, was it real?" "Well, of course," said King Tanaka. "And now, lying on your bed of roses, is it real?" "Yes," said King Tanaka. "Ah," said the sage, "now look, which is not real?" And being a philosopher, King Tanaka said, "Well, if you look at it from the viewpoint of philosophy, then a dream is a dream, and so my dream was not real." "Well," said the sage, "if your dream was not real, but appeared to be real, then surely your state of awakening is also not real. So neither is real." So this somewhat rang true with King Tanaka, but King Tanaka said, "Well, what is it then?" And the sage said, "There is a state beyond these to which we must attain." And that brings us to the saying that's been said before about what Divine Mother used to say quite often. You have to have discrimination, renunciation, and concentration. Discrimination between the real and the unreal. Renunciation of what is not real, and concentration on that which is real. So that puts us with our heads deeply underwater, forcing us to recognize the unreality of our changing life, ever changing, and brings us to this absolute truth. Now, it's not often that I will enunciate such things, but at this moment it seems appropriate, so it's said again, and it's been said before. Anything that changes is not real. Anything that changes is not real. If we look at what the great books have told us from different persuasions, what is the end of the journey that they designate? Paradise, realization of God, nirvana, an absence of illusion. What is this state? And again it brings the circle around for us. What is it that arises when stillness and movement meet, knowing that the movement is the ever-changing realities of life and the stillness is what it is that remains constant and has been constant throughout our entire existence. Find the answer to this. What is this state? Where do you find yourself knowing that you understand now what is real and not real? Because it cannot be said to you, discriminate, renunciate, and concentrate, if you do not know the difference between the real and the unreal. You know silence, you know stillness, you know the movement. What happens when they meet? What happens when the realities of life, good or bad, enter this stillness, meet this unchanging reality? What happens? What arises? Non-judgment, for a start. Absolutely the answers that are needed and required in any given moment. Isn't it so? Haven't you found? Why is that saying, be still and know that I am? What is that I am? That which is produced from the still. And it can only be reduced by whatever event of life it is that's entering in. And when it comes out, it's no longer judged as good or bad. It becomes a blessing, a grace, doesn't it? Always, we found. So what is it then? What is this state?
I'd say that's a state of enlightenment.
Of course, it begins with enlightenment. You wouldn't know the difference between the real and the unreal if you were not enlightened. You wouldn't be sitting here if you were not enlightened, what's more. What is this state? Because stillness and movement are always present. There's never an instant where there is not a meeting of these two in the state of enlightenment. So there is always something arising, always, from this, which we have to call a state. Isn't it so? State of knowing.
Samadhi?
Samadhi, you can call it? Yes. But is it the same as that which has been spoken of before, this state where those three meet, existence, knowledge and bliss? Isn't it beyond this? But samadhi it is, we have to call it so. But in the moments to come, we need to give it a name. We need to give it a name. That's the discrimination, renunciation and concentration. Discrimination between the real and the unreal. Renouncing that which is not real and concentration on that which is real. That state of being. So it's said, and the way it's coined to some over the years is, don't forget who you are. Don't forget who you are. Don't get caught. back in the movement, that is. Don't get caught in the judgment. Discriminate, renunciate, and concentrate. Thank you, thank you. Sorry.